The Apollo 11 mission, which culminated in the first human landing on the moon on July 20, 1969, is one of the most significant achievements in human history. However, it has also been the center of various conspiracy theories suggesting that the moon landing was faked by the United States government. The hypothesis claims that NASA staged the landing to assert dominance in the space race against the Soviet Union and to distract public attention from domestic issues. Origins of the conspiracy theory. The notion of the moon landing being a hoax gained traction in the 1970s, with the release of several books and documentaries that questioned the veracity of the Apollo program. The most influential among these was Bill Kaysing's book, We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 Billion Swindle, published in 1974. Kaysing, who had previously worked for a company that manufactured components for NASA, argued that the government had fabricated the entire program due to delays in the project and the enormous budget, which he calculated at around $30 billion. Key claims of the hoax theory. Proponents of the moon landing conspiracy theory often cite several pieces of so-called evidence to support their claims, including photographic anomalies, shadows. Conspiracy theorists argue that the way shadows fall in the photographs taken on the moon suggests the presence of artificial lighting. They contend that if the sun was the only light source, then shadows should be parallel, but they appear at different angles. The American flag. Some theorists claim that the flag appears to be waving in the wind, which they argue is impossible in the airless environment of the moon. They argue that this indicates the presence of air and, therefore, an atmosphere. Missing stars. Critics of the Apollo photographs point out that stars are not visible in the lunar photographs. They argue this means the pictures were taken on Earth, but photographers explain that the camera settings were optimized for the bright lunar surface, leading to stars not being captured clearly. Radiation from the Van Allen belts. Some conspiracy theorists claim that astronauts could not have survived the radiation exposure while passing through the Van Allen radiation belts, a region of intense radiation surrounding the Earth. However, scientists clarify that the spacecraft's shielding was sufficient to protect the astronauts during the brief transit. Inconsistencies in the narrative. Supporters of the hoax theory often cite what they consider contradictions in NASA's reports and explanations. For instance, there are apparent discrepancies in crew accounts, mission details, and timelines. However, many of these inconsistencies can be attributed to human error, the chaotic nature of scientific endeavors, and the evolving understanding of space travel at the time. Motives for the hoax. Proponents argue that there were strong motives for NASA and the U.S. government to fake the moon landing. During the height of the Cold War, a successful moon landing would demonstrate U.S. superiority over the Soviet Union, who had already achieved significant milestones in space. Additionally, the government faced growing domestic dissent regarding the Vietnam War and other societal issues, for which a successful moon landing could serve as a unifying nationalistic distraction. Response and debunking. The moon landing conspiracy theories have been thoroughly debunked by experts in fields such as physics, photography, and astronomy. Key points made in refutation include scientific explanations. Experts explain the shadow angles using basic principles of perspective and the topography of the lunar surface. The flag's appearance is accounted for by a horizontal rod placed in the flag to keep it unfurled, giving it a waving appearance despite no atmosphere. Photographic evidence. Photography specialists emphasize that the lack of stars is a consequence of camera exposure settings. The bright lunar surface required short exposure times, rendering distant stars invisible in the images. Radiation concerns. NASA explains that the spacecraft's trajectory was carefully calculated to minimize the astronauts' time spent in the Van Allen belts, significantly reducing radiation exposure to levels considered safe. Widespread collaboration. The theory undermines the credibility of tens of thousands of scientists, engineers, and technicians involved in the Apollo program, not to mention the international agencies and observers who track the Apollo missions. Continuing influence. Despite the overwhelming evidence supporting the reality of the moon landing, conspiracy theories remain popular among certain groups, fueled by skepticism of government and science. In the era of the internet and social media, these ideas have found platforms to perpetuate themselves, often alongside other conspiracy theories. The persistence of the moon landing conspiracy theory exemplifies broader themes in society related to trust in institutions, the nature of evidence, and the motivations behind human belief. It illustrates how a combination of social, psychological, and cultural factors can lead people to adopt alternative narratives, even when confronted with substantial counter-evidence. Conclusion: the moon landing conspiracy theory is not merely a claim about the Apollo missions, but a complex cultural phenomenon reflecting distrust in authority and the allure of alternative narratives. While the factual basis supporting the reality of the moon landing is robust, the belief in the conspiracy continues to capture the imaginations of many, serving as a reminder of the enduring power of myths and the human propensity to seek alternative explanations for monumental events.